Sooner or later, everyone notices that not everything in his life depends on his own will, and on the will of other people too. No matter how significant a person's motivation, desires, abilities, and efforts are, some external forces may well interfere in the matter, which can radically change the state of things. These forces can help a person, they can interfere and counteract him, or they can simply turn the situation in a completely unexpected direction. They can give a person a feeling of happiness and fullness of life, they can suppress and destroy it, or they may require an urgent response to unusual situations. These very forces are commonly called the highest in the sense that a person in front of them often turns out to be weak or even powerless. Who are the higher powers? And why do the higher powers, who are called to protect and protect us, allow what we consider unfair? The first moment, what and whom do we consider to be higher powers? For some, those who somehow surpass our civilization in development are already the highest forces, and there should be eternal goodness and grace on their level. That is, this next stage of development after us should be some kind of super fair authority, which should immediately punish all troublemakers, bad people, and so on. In fact, things are much more complicated. It is worth objectively recognizing that our planet is quite low in terms of spiritual development. Even if Atlanteans were recognized as a developing society of a low level, then we are people, especially since we are somewhere at the bottom of the hierarchy. The universe is designed so that a higher level has the ability to influence a lower dimension. But since we are practically at the bottom of this ladder, it would be strange to expect that just one level above us is the same eternal goodness and justice. Yes, the Atlanteans had humane curators. However, the lizards were at the same stage of development as them, whose behavior did not cause delight. In any case, neither of them can be attributed to the higher powers. We can say that there are beings like us a step above us, only of a slightly higher development. They also make mistakes, can follow the light or dark path, and gain their own experience. Then who can be attributed to the higher powers, and what is within their competence? In our opinion, it would be a mistake to personify these very highest forces. That is, to assume that some kind of omnipotent being is sitting somewhere, who personally deals with all the world's evil, that is, punishes violators and avenges the suffering of good people. Here everything is much more complicated and simpler at the same time. Higher forces manifest themselves in the form of the existence of certain laws. Absolutely everything is subject to these laws, and every soul at any stage of development can become an instrument of this law. For example, the derivative of the global law of equilibrium is the law of karma. It works always and everywhere. However, its manifestations are not always linear and obvious, and this can confuse many. It will seem to them that justice does not exist. Take the same collapse of Atlantis. Those Atlanteans who survived the moment of the lizard invasion and all the subsequent troubles were, as if specially assembled on one ship. In other words, these were the souls who needed such an experience for various reasons. Most of them could have been on the other side of the invasion in the past. Roughly speaking, they could once colonize some planets in a similar way, and now it's time for them to learn the downside of these actions. How can this be? Most Atlanteans were indigenous, that is, their race was created on Earth, and they began to incarnate in it. The answer to this is that any soul is eternal, which means it lives indefinitely. The creation of Atlantis was for all local souls just another stage in their existence. It is quite obvious that they lived somewhere else before that, let's say in other, earlier development cycles. That is why there were no innocent lambs who absolutely undeservedly fell under the arbitrariness of the lizards at that moment among the incarnate Atlanteans. If some soul did not need such an experience and had no corresponding obligations, then it simply did not incarnate at that time. That is why one cannot blame evil lizards, overlooked higher powers, and the like for everything that happened. Rather, it happened because it had to happen. Therefore, all of the above is true not only in relation to Atlantis, but also applies to our civilization. And it also applies to the fate of an individual. It is not necessary to consider the higher powers as some kind of creatures with a club who must immediately flee and punish all those responsible. At times, every person or even civilization can become their tool, that is, act as a promoter or punisher. At the same time, the higher powers themselves should not be identified with any person or organization, and then accuse them of not watching. The higher forces, they are also higher because it is extremely difficult for us to understand their work from our low level. However, even observing how certain laws operate in this and other worlds, it is safe to say that justice exists. In order to at least begin to understand this justice, spiritual growth is needed. We are only at the beginning of the journey. There is still much to learn and realize. However, it is already possible to come to the unequivocal conclusion that nothing ever happens just like that. All your troubles were the result of your own past actions. Therefore, there is no point in blaming anyone but yourself for them. Understanding this fact is very difficult, but when you finally figure it out, everything will fall into place. The appeal to higher powers has always been practiced in one form or another during the existence of man on planet Earth. People have always believed that there is something higher than us and our life, living conditions. They came up with rituals, tried to personify higher powers. Someone believed and said that he saw live and contacted them, conveying it in symbolism. And none of them made mistakes, did not invent, but in one form or another felt their presence. I got hints, saw signs, felt some kind of impact from their proximity, and very likely felt a little bit crazy at first, especially when I tried to share it with others. All world religions are built on the fact that someone felt first, heard first and believed, imbued with this experience, joined in it and became a bearer of faith, like knowledge, vibrations, sensations, energies, waves. In other words, he became a receiver and a transmitter for himself and others. The stronger the faith, the stronger the contact, clearer and clearer. Faith itself has become a channel through which information is read by those who believe, and there are thousands of confirmations of miracles, faces of saints, descriptions of events, and in our simple everyday life, many people read and see, live miracles. I believe, I live, feel and hear many such clues along the path of life. The more I believe, the louder and purer the sound of higher powers. You can call it the voice of the Creator, you can call it a guardian angel, you can do it differently. The main thing is that it should be that sacred unity with the highest, pure, which does not belong to our earthly and very dense life, in which the personality takes over from us, consisting of body, soul and spirit. When we turn to the Supreme, to the one who is stronger, wiser, has knowledge above us and our vision, our idea, we only activate what is not manifested in the density of our dense world. As it is impossible to manifest an archetype, symbolism in the dense world, one can only try to define it in form, but the form is again created by the personality, and it is the individual who will try to impose this knowledge on others. Each of us will have our own form of faith and creed. Each of us presents his own, as an analogue of our inner knowledge, and each of us is able to enter into this dialogue, if necessary. Each of us will give our own meaning and perspective even to what we see in the same form. There is no need to be afraid of this. We need to understand that only what already lives in it is available to our consciousness. Our higher power is in us. As in meditation, we go to the sage. As in the archetype, there are magicians and witches, shamanism, visualization. All this has long existed in psychotherapeutic processes and techniques. No matter what scientific form it takes, all knowledge of psychology comes into contact with the higher, unformed inner form that can be easily prescribed in a mathematical, physical, or chemical formula. Nevertheless, it is there and it works. So the higher forces themselves accompany psychology as knowledge, science, help to develop it and discover everything new so long forgotten old. No matter how far human civilization has stepped in the exploration of the earthly and cosmic world, no matter how rapidly progress has developed, no matter what heights science has reached, there will always be something that will frighten and awe every person. This is death, and it's not even that the earthly path is suddenly interrupted, although this fact is scary. The question is more about the unknown. No one knows what's beyond the line. It is this very uncertainty that leads us to endless philosophical reflections, which only exacerbate the confusion and horror of the inevitable end. What awaits us beyond the line? Is there at least something there, or is there only emptiness and timelessness ahead? Is there a rebirth, or is it all a fairy tale? The conclusion from all this is very simple. Let everyone choose their own worldview, their own goals, and their own path in life. But the main thing is that a person chooses good as often as possible and renounces evil. And it is also very important not to forget about your freedom of choice and not to shift all responsibility to any higher powers. That's when life will not be lived in vain.